Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to part 3 of chapter 1 of my No, you know what? There's no point in calling it a 1000 subscriber special anymore. Because at the time I'm recording this, it's up at 6,500. And it's rising fast! So from now on, this special shall be renamed to my first subscriber special trilogy. Because, if you guys didn't know, this is my first time making a subscriber special extravaganza. So before we delve deep into the dark corners of the internet with some more creepypasta, I would just like to say this one thing. I cannot thank you guys enough for 5,000 subscribers, which is probably gonna be even more by the time this video will be finished. But whatever the count may be, I truly appreciate it. And I hope you'll enjoy the final part of chapter 1 of my first subscriber special trilogy. I love you all. Now let's talk about possibly my favorite creepypasta, like, ever. I can see how people may find it overrated or not scary, but to me, it really hits home. Mostly because it was the first creepypasta I ever read. It made me sweat and quiver in fear. Can you guess which one I'm talking about yet? That's right, Squidward's Suicide. I thought I might as well summarize it, since I glanced over it in my top list due to time restraints. So here we go, Squidward's Suicide. The story begins with a Nickelodeon intern telling us of how he once worked there. He wasn't paid, but to him, it was like a dream coming true. His job was to, together with some other interns, watch and review SpongeBob episodes before they aired on television. The editors usually put in funny fake title cards before the episodes played, such as how sex doesn't work, among others. So when the interns saw the title Squidward's Suicide, they didn't think twice about it. The episode opened with our old pal Squidward practicing for a concert, while SpongeBob and Patrick disturb him. He tells them to knock it off, and SpongeBob and Patrick then cry as usual. We skip to the end of Squidward's concert, and while he is playing his clarinet, a few frames seem to skip, yet the audio did not. After Squidward finished playing, there was a moment of silence. Then, the audience started booing. It wasn't ordinary cartoon booing, as you could clearly hear malice in it. Even SpongeBob and Patrick were in the audience, booing, much unlike their normal behavior. The oddest thing about the scene, though, was the fact that everyone in the audience had very realistic, blood-red eyes. It then cut to Squidward, sitting on his bed, quietly sobbing. It sounded real. Nothing could be heard except for Squidward's heavy breathing and pained sobbing. After a long while of just that, a quiet breeze that sounded like it came from a forest could be heard, becoming more and more audible by the second. What sounded like demented laughing could also be heard, popping in for a second or two at random intervals. Squidward was still lying on his bed, with his arms covering his face. Suddenly, Squidward's tears of water changed into tears of blood. The screen then violently twitched, and something flashed on screen for a split second. The editors rewound the tape, and everyone in the room was utterly shocked at what they saw. On screen was what appeared to be an 8-year-old boy in nothing but his underpants, with his stomach cut open, entrails pulled out, and one eye dangling, popped. The most unsettling thing about the picture was the fact that the cameraman's shadow was visible. Squidward continued to cry tears of blood as another image flashed on screen. Everyone was reluctant to see it, but they knew they had to. This time, there was what appeared to be a girl, roughly around the same age as the boy, with her back cut open and her entrails pulled out in a pool of blood. Cameraman's shadow was still visible. Squidward then removed his arms from his face to reveal the same type of realistic eyes as the crowd from the beginning of the episode. Suddenly, a number of frames flashed on screen, and when played after one another, it was revealed to be an animation, where a big hand could be seen pulling out the organs of a little boy, and there was even a frame where the boy could be seen blinking and focusing on the hand. This is where the author of the story lost it. He vomited on the floor. They called in the director, Mr. Hillenberg, who had to see what they had witnessed. The episode ended with Squidward staring at the screen, and a deep voice could be heard, telling Squidward to do it. Squidward then pulled out a shotgun and shot himself in the mouth, resulting in brains and blood splattering everywhere. The episode ended with a shot of Squidward's dead corpse, with one eye dangling out of its socket. He had now become like the children in the photos, dead in a most gruesome way. Hillenberg was furious and demanded to know what was going on. They rewatched the episode together with him and called in the police. An investigation was made, but the children and perpetrator of the murders were never identified or caught. The timestamp for when the episode had been edited, though, revealed that the episode had been finished 28 seconds before the interns watched it. And so the author closes by telling us that he now thinks twice about things. Gruesome, disgusting, and immensely creepy are some of the words you could use to describe Squidward's suicide. But, like before, this story is also fake. To get it out of the way first, this would definitely make the news. Also, the author of the story posted a thread on Reddit where he was surprised and happy at how big his story had become. Now, putting all of that aside, the episodes on YouTube are also, of course, fake, as they've been edited together with clips from other SpongeBob episodes. And why are the videos on YouTube always so staticky and bad quality, but this picture, for example, so clear? And hey, I recognize those eyes. Huh. So there you go, the creepypasta that I read first, now debunked, so we can all go home and be happy. Now, I'm going to talk about a story that I had not read until I made this video. But since you guys want to see a video on it, I thought I might as well get it over with, just cause I love you all so much. So here's Eyeless Jack. Eyeless Jack tells the story of Mitch, and how he moved into a new home together with his mom, dad, and brother. While sleeping though, he is constantly visited by a creature with no eyes or mouth, just a pale face with black empty sockets. One morning, when Mitch wakes up, he realizes that he has a huge gash on his face. When he goes to the doctor, it is revealed that his kidney has been removed while he was sleeping. Okay. That same night, Mitch sees the creature, and what does he do first? Attack it, maybe? Run? Call for help? Nope, he grabs his camera and snaps a photo of it. It then attacks him, and Mitch barely escapes, grabs his things, and runs away. He unfortunately trips on a rock and renders unconscious. The next morning, he wakes up in the same hospital as he visited before, and the doctor assures him that he only suffered mild injuries, but the same could not be said about his brother, who had been killed by the creature. As Mitch was packing his things to get ready to move, he finds his brother's dead body. Why the body is still there after the police investigated, I have no idea. He doesn't tell his parents about it though, for whatever reason, but sees something, half-eaten, next to the body. He picks it up, and then sits down in his parents' car. He then realized what he was holding in his hands. His missing kidney, with some sort of black substance on it. He then vomited as the car drove away, never to return to that house ever again. Now I can see why this story is popular. Not too long, and leaves a lot up to the imagination, and leaves a decent amount of ambiguity. It does bring up some questionable character decisions though, but ultimately it was a good read. But, say it with me guys, it's fake. Do I need to address this again with the news reports? This should from now on be a reason for every single subsequent creepypasta I'm gonna debunk in the future. And, if the creature, who is never even called Jack in the story, but is called Eyeless Jack either way, has no eyes, how was it able to cut Mitch's stomach open and steal his kidney? Did it listen to sound or something? And how was it making rustling sounds if it has no mouth? And why did Mitch decide the smartest thing to do in that situation was to take a picture? Why did he not mention the dead body to his parents? Either way, it doesn't matter. Suspension of disbelief is always great. Now here's Laughing Jack 2. Laughing Jack tells us a story through a mother's perspective, and how her life went downhill as her 5-year-old son James started to tell her about his quote-unquote imaginary friend Laughing Jack. After she finds James eating candy, she grows worried about what James does together with his imaginary friend, and asks where he got the candy from. He tells her Laughing Jack gave it to him. The next day, when the mother wakes up, she is greeted by something terrible. When she walks downstairs, the family dog has been strung up, with its stomach cut open, with the same type of candy in it. She then hears James scream, and she rushes to his room. Inside, James is crying on his bed, and all of his furniture had been thrown on the ground. She grabbed James and ran to the neighbor's home, where she called the police. The police investigated, and then told her it was okay to go back home, as it seemed the perpetrator had escaped. Well, what if he comes back? Whatever. Anyways, that same night, the mother puts a baby monitor in James's room, and just when she's about to fall asleep, she hears a maniacal laugh from James's room. Inside his room, she finds James nailed to the wall with his tongue and eyes removed, and his stomach had been cut open, revealing his entrails, although he was still breathing. She then sees the real Laughing Jack in his clown outfit next to James, who is laughing hysterically. The mother attacks him with a knife, but he disappears into a puff of smoke, as she instead pierces James's heart with the knife instead. The police arrived at the scene a little while later and found the mother still clutching the knife, crying, and they take her away. She is then thrown in a mental hospital, deemed mentally insane, and that's the end of this story. Now, just like Eyeless Jack, I had not read this one before either, so what did I think of it? It was okay. I liked the character of the mother and little James, although there were some flaws. Jack bears a pretty uncanny resemblance to Jeff the Killer, and we learn next to nothing about him, other than the fact that he wears a clown outfit and that he likes to cut people open. Now this could be seen as a positive, as it leaves a lot up to your imagination, but to me, I would have liked to know more about Jack himself. Now I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that someone's made an origin story for him, but I'm covering the original story, and in my opinion the original should also give some background to who your villain is and why. But whatever. Also, I thought there was too much gore, just for the sake of gore and nothing else. The dog, for example, left no emotional impact on the mother or James, and it felt as if the dog was just there to die. But hey, that's just my opinion, and it wasn't bad, it was just okay. Now here's why the story is fake. Think about it. If the mother is in a mental hospital, then how did she write the story? There were no witnesses there except for the mother, so how could she write it? Also, Jack disappearing into a puff of smoke really took me out of the experience. Like I said before, teleportation, at least not for humans, has not been invented. Yet. Now, let's do Gateway of the Mind. Listen to my explanation in my top 13 list, or go read it yourselves. It's a bloody amazing story. If you haven't read it, do it now. Good. Removing all senses and keeping someone alive is impossible. How did they even feed him if he couldn't feel anything? How did he focus his eyes if they removed his senses? Was he possessed? And no such experiment as the one described in the story has ever occurred. So don't worry about this one either. If you're wondering why I breeze over some of these stories, it's because I want to get through them all as fast as possible. Because I want to get through most, if not all, creepypastas you guys have suggested. So here's the next story, which is actually not a creepypasta. It's Bloody Mary! So let's try it! Bloody Mary, 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 Bloody Mary. It's fake. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! Described as being a human-like creature with big wings, it was first sighted in the 60s. Through this picture. No one knows what it is, what it wants, or what it's here to do. Well, who knows? Maybe it's a species of animal we haven't discovered yet. Maybe it was a really big bird. Maybe it was a mutated bird. Maybe it was an alien. Maybe it was one of a kind. If that's the case, then it's most likely dead by now. And who knows if it's actually dangerous? No need to worry, guys. The Lavender Town Syndrome might just be the most well-known gaming creepypasta ever made. Rumor has it that the first versions of Pokémon Red and Green in Japan had specific frequencies and binaural beats not seen anywhere else in the game, in the Lavender Town song that made children with headphones feel sick, receive headaches, and most notably, commit suicide. The story about the syndrome is usually associated with 3 other stories: the White Hand, Buried Alive, and the Ghost Animation. The White Hand was an unused enemy found in the game's code that was going to appear in the Pokémon Tower. The enemy was, surprise surprise, a white, decaying hand. It had 2 attacks, Fist and Brutal. Several frames of these attacks are missing, and no one knows what the real attacks look like, although they have apparently also caused children to feel sick. The Buried Alive model was an unused boss that was supposed to appear at the 3rd floor of the Pokémon Tower instead of the Marowak in the final game. The boss would utter out these sentences: "You're here. I'm trapped, and I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?" The battle would then engage. The boss, Buried Alive, would possess 2 white hands, a Gengar, and a Muk. All Pokémon were ridiculously overpowered, making the fight incredibly challenging. Winning the fight would result in the game freezing, making the battle impossible to advance in. Losing the fight would result in Buried Alive uttering the words, "Finally, fresh meat," followed by several lines of gibberish. The game would then show an incredibly dark typical game over screen, where Buried Alive was shown, devouring the player character gruesomely, while a scary as fuck song played in the background, known as staticmesh.wav. Strangest thing though, was that after losing the battle, the Game Boy cartridge was to download the Game Over image to the external memory, and every time the Game Boy would turn on, the typical Game Boy title screen would be replaced with the Game Over screen, along with staticmesh.wav. The Ghost Animation, coded as haunting.swf, was intended to be placed in several areas of the Pokémon Tower. However, players could not interact with it, leaving many to believe that it was intended as a background feature. The Ghost Animation, just like the White Hand, must be viewed in individual frames. It is comprised of 59 frames in total. However, after extraction, around half of these frames have been revealed to be the standard Ghost model used in red, green, and blue. Around a quarter of the remaining frames show nothing but static to produce a fading effect. However, coupled with these bursts of static are several frames of screaming faces, along with images of a skeletal man in a cloak, assumed to be the Grim Reaper, and of several killed corpses. The meaning behind these frames are unknown, and lead programmer Hisashi Sagabe testified as to having no knowledge as to where these images surfaced. Out of all the phenomena associated with the Lavender Town syndrome, this animation is the most speculated on. In his thesis, Video Games and the Manipulation of the Human Mind, Dr. Jackson Turner argued that the images were intentionally placed in. Due to their brief time appearing on screen and the graphic nature of the frames, Turner theorizes that these were meant to subliminally influence players into becoming more frightened by the disturbing surroundings. Well, I have to say I'm pretty spooked by these Lavender Town thingies. But, are they real? Unfortunately, not. You see, if numerous children were to have committed suicide after playing Pokemon, the media would be all over it. I mean, just look at when Electric Soldier Porygon, an episode of the anime, aired in Japan. In the episode, flashes of colors that could cause epilepsy were featured numerous times, and actually made 600 children in Japan suffer epileptic seizures. The media was all over this, so why would they ignore suicides? So no children actually kill themselves over the song. Now what about those freaky ass unused enemies and things? Well, first of all, GIF, WAV and SWF files could not be stored on an old Game Boy cartridge. And it would be really stupid of Nintendo to put such morbid and disgusting in-your-face disturbing stuff in a game targeted mainly at children unless they wanted controversy. And think about it. Why would Nintendo end the game with the main character getting eaten? What an anti-climax ending. How are they able to program an ending where the buried alive ate you, but they can't program a victory? Seems kind of fishy. Oh, and Dr. Jackson Turner is actually not a real person, and no thesis known as Video Games and the Manipulation of the Human Mind exists. The closest match I could find was Frederick Jackson Turner, who died in 1932. He seems like a good sport.
New mic change! Ooh! Yeah, guys, thank you so much for your patience. I know it's been really long since my last video, but if you saw my update, I actually broke my microphone, so I had to get a new one, but this one is so much better. It's the Audio-Technica AT 2020, I think it's called. And it's really awesome, and it was pretty expensive, but to me it's worth it. So without further ado, let's continue. Remember my summary and my top list? I'm too much of a lazy fuck to repeat myself. So apparently, Matt Groening can see into the future, guys. Seems kind of odd though. If he can see into the future, why is the show still on television if everyone hates it? And that's also kinda strange. Like I said, no one has been able to see into the future. Yeah, well, except for Forensic. And if Matt went slightly insane during the production of Season 1, then why has he not showed any symptoms of it since? You don't just snap out of insanity. And the episodes on YouTube are of course also fake. Sony Vegas effects for the win! My Little Pony Cupcakes tells us a story of how Rainbow Dash visits Pinkie Pie, who is making cupcakes, but is missing one special ingredient. She then drugs poor Rainbow Dash, and the rest is just a really disgusting, in-detail description of how Pinkie Pie tortures the crap out of Rainbow Dash, and it's all so nasty. But come on, it's just a story, a fan fiction, written by a fan, and it has never occurred in Equestria. I'm kinda surprised you guys wanted me to cover this because I thought the answer was so obvious, but I guess not. Two friends, a man and a woman, explore a cave called God's Mouth. Despite the warning signs at the entrance, they decide to venture into the cave. They soon get separated, and the man is soon trapped in a tight space with no apparent way out. The man collapses to the ground, crying, accepting his fate, before the flashlight's battery dies. A red hand is seen reaching out for the man as God's mouth devours another victim. Well, there were no eyewitnesses. No one knows what happened except for the man and or the woman. And if the cave actually existed, wouldn't there be info about it on the internet? It's a cool story. The author of the story tells us of how he brings home a computer he found outside his apartment. To his amazement, the computer worked fine. While looking through the computer files, he finds an AVI file. The video was nearly an hour long and consisted of what seemed to be an interview with a young, attractive woman. The audio quality was awful, and you could barely make out what she was saying. After around 15 minutes, the woman's face started to redden, as if the questions were bothering her. She pinches her skin numerous times in the video, as if she's being asked about it a lot. Soon after, she begins to sob. Slowly and slowly, her sobbing becomes more and more powerful, until she was crying so hard she could barely look into the camera. She stops talking and puts her hands up against her face. The video then blacks out and ends. After further inspection, there was still 10 minutes left on the video. At the last 2 minutes, the video came back, where a pair of legs could be seen walking along a couple of train tracks, as if the camera had accidentally been recording. The author of the story recognized the train tracks, as he remembered them not being far away from where he lived. The next day, he decides to explore the area, and comes across a seemingly abandoned house. While investigating, he is disturbed by the fact that the furniture in the abandoned house seems way too new to be there. The only locked door in the whole house was to the basement, and the padlock seemed almost new. And when the author investigated the bathroom, the dust on the mirror had been wiped away, and in the bathtub there appeared to be a plastic tarp that still had water droplets on it. The author then heard a loud moan from something inside the house, and he jumped out of the second-story window. He later realized that the moan could have been a water pipe, but it still unsettles him. Why would water be running in a seemingly abandoned house? The author then closes the story by saying it's been 2 months since he investigated the house, and he does not plan to go back ever again. Hey, actually, there's nothing out of the ordinary here. Who knows? It could have actually happened, which is a great accomplishment for any creepy story. Yay! In this story, the author is terrorized by someone, or something, in a chat room that continuously types nonsense, along with an odd-looking smiley. The person, I think, also posts a link to a page, blood.com. The page is nothing but a really creepy-looking picture made out of the word funny mouth, along with the sentence, "I hope you can like it." The author is then spammed with emails by Funnymouth, with such subjects as, "I like to lick the blood," and "I see your handsome face." The author also starts having nightmares about what feels like a slimy worm on his neck. After a long while of being bombarded by emails and nonsense, the author grows frustrated and tired of this user, or this thing that doesn't even seem to be giving up. In the end, the author has the same nightmare as before, but when he wakes up, His mouth feels incredibly wet. When he rushes to the bathroom and sees himself in the mirror, he is shocked, but then begins laughing uncontrollably. His mouth had become just like Funny Mouth, and to the author, who had now become completely insane, it was beautiful. Now this one is frickin' awesome. But how the hell did the protagonist's mouth become like that out of nowhere? That's spooky. Could Funny Mouth affect people through computers? But really though, were there no other people in the chat room who can testify to Funny Mouth actually being there? What about the friend to the protagonist in the story? Where's he? Wouldn't he be worried about his buddy? Really good story though. When the author moves into a new home and falls sick on his 5th birthday, he is visited by a creature with a big wide mouth called, well, Mr. Widemouth. The creature seemed friendly at first, but slowly became more and more hostile and creepy. It tried to convince the protagonist to jump out of the window, as he says a trampoline will be there to bounce him back up. He also starts to play with the kitchen knives, and when the author goes outside, Mr. Widemouth tells him to follow him, as he wanted to show him something at the end of a path that he had showed all other children who had played with him. The author, though his young age, had grown skeptical as to how innocent this little creature actually was, and declined the offer. Soon afterwards, the family moved again, as the author's father had a job that required him to do so. When looking back at the house, the author sees Widemouth in the window, waving goodbye. Years later, the author returned to see that the house had burned down. He then followed the path and found an old cemetery with countless graves of young children. Well, this one I can't find much evidence disproving it, since it's really vague, which is great. Gosh, there's so many great stories today. Tiki Toby. Hey, I couldn't find the original story, guys, sorry. It seems to have been erased from existence. That's creepy. Although, I did find this very interesting post on DeviantArt by the original author. Now this one is also awesome. NES Godzilla is a lengthy creepypasta about, what else? An unusual copy of Godzilla for the NES that was given to the author by his friend Billy, who bought it on the internet for him. When playing the game, the author is constantly haunted by a terrifying monster known as Red. The story is mostly slow and not overly creepy, until the final chapter where everything builds up and just goes completely insane. If you haven't read the story yet, it's well worth the read, and it will definitely leave you unsettled. Now this one is very creepy and has a lot of really cool pictures to convince the reader. Although Red possessing the game cartridge and hurting the player in real life is of course impossible. And hey, I want a sequel. I want to know what Red actually was, because I freaking love this story. Much like the Russian sleep experiment, this one also deals with a really messed up experiment. The experiment, conducted by a man nicknamed Zimmerman by the author, dealt with another world which we could not see, and how Zimmerman wanted to open a portal to this other world. Bringing in 3 test subjects, they put them in individual cells. Zimmerman then chanted something in an odd language, and the ground started to shake. Security cameras went crazy, and screams from the cells could be heard. The next day, one of the subjects was lying in her cell, face down, stone dead. The other two subjects, though, had been possessed, turned into inhuman creatures with big, black, soul-piercing eyes and smooth, hairless skin. Security approached one of the subjects, and when the cell door opened, the creature attacked furiously, and the guards emptied over a dozen magazines in the creature until it stayed dead. The other subject, the only one still alive, had continuously stared into the security camera, standing completely still and doing nothing else. After a while, a sound could be heard, becoming increasingly louder and louder. It was a song, Living in the Sunlight by Tiny Tim. The song played continuously until it was unbearable. Then the power went out. When it came back, the subject had escaped its cell. It then appeared in the central area where all staff was present. It stopped for a moment, glanced over at Zimmerman, and then ran up to him and ripped the man in half with its giant claws. It went berserk and murdered countless staff, and the protagonist ran to the ladder to get out of there. He climbed to the top and realized that the only right thing to do was to close the hatch, dooming his fellow co-workers, but saving the world from the terrible creature. Or so it seemed. The story ends with the author telling us of why he decided to share this story, since he is basically the only one left with the knowledge of what actually happened. He shared it because he could hear Living in the Sunlight outside his house. It had found him. Well, if this was a secret experiment that no one should have ever known about, why has the government or someone else not taken down the story? They would want to cover this up. And are there no documents documenting this? How would Zimmerman otherwise be able to fund the project? Now, it's a fantastic story though, I have to say. It really left me scared. Props to the author, 2 thumbs up. This is probably one of the best creepypastas I have ever read, ever. Great job. Zalgo, much like Cthulhu, is a creature that signifies the end of the world. The creature is usually accompanied by pictures of old childhood icons turned into disgusting, putrid beings, and wherever the monster roams, the surrounding areas are always corrupted around it, or him. And it does not exist, and it never will. It will not end the world. And how would someone even predict this? It surfaced on the internet, which means it didn't surface from some old prophecy or something of that sort. In short, it's not real, so don't worry. It's pretty cool though. Much like Happy Appy and Candle Cove, 1999 tells us of an obscure children's television channel, run by what seemed to be only one guy. The shows on the channel were incredibly low budget and somewhat stupid. Some episodes took rather disturbing turns though, such as one episode where children were taught that scissors were dangerous, and a resistant hand could be seen getting viciously cut with a scissor. As the story progresses, more and more is learned about the channel and the man who ran it. At first glance, he could be seen as just a really creepy pedophile that kidnapped children, but after further inspection and investigation by the police and the author himself, something far more disturbing was revealed. It seemed the man was sacrificing children in a brutal, satanic ritual, and the entire thing is still shrouded in mystery. Now the story mentions the police investigating the channel by asking the author about it, and after doing some research we come to the conclusion that no such investigation has ever occurred. And how did the perpetrator kidnap so many children? Was he really that convincing? Were all of those kids really that stupid? And why were so many children eager to meet the man behind the rather crappy television shows? The author himself mentions that when he supposedly saw the shows as a kid, he himself thought they were sometimes funny, but overall pretty boring and stupid. And if a channel as fucked up as this one actually existed, where are the news reports? The missing child reports? All VHS recordings? None? Oh well, it's still a good story. When cleaning his attic, the protagonist comes across an old red box with a CD-ROM in it, titled Chatroom 98. When installing the program, it seems to be just any ordinary chatbot program. But after chatting with the program for a while, it is revealed to be something else entirely. Something far more sinister. And what is it? Well, go read the story for yourself. It was actually much better than I expected it to be. Good job, author. Now, Darwin Clark is not a real person though, unfortunately. Yes, I had the balls to look it up. If he actually murdered his two sisters, wouldn't there be some info or evidence? Most unlucky protagonist ever. Now this story is obviously inspired by such stories as Squidward's suicide in Eddie, the Lost Episode. Which isn't bad, it just makes the story seem a little less original than what it could have been. Anyways, one night, when the protagonist, Sarah, was watching Cartoon Network, a quote-unquote special episode of The Amazing World of Gumball came on, titled The Grieving. The episode featured numerous characters from the show crying, as the main characters had gone missing, and later showed up, killed in realistically drawn, brutal ways. The episode ended with a couple of pictures appearing on screen that Sarah remembers very well. One that stuck out to her was an animation where what seemed to be a young boy that looked a lot like Sarah's younger brother was shot in the head by a man that looked similar to her father. An investigation was made, and Sarah's younger brother had indeed been killed, and Sarah's parents were the main suspects, as they had been out of town for the past few days, together with the rest of Sarah's family, while Sarah stayed at home and witnessed the horrible episode. How convenient. I'm not gonna go over everything about this story, as a lot happens in it, but it was good. I do think it somewhat lost its creepiness factor near the end though, as it got pretty unrealistic, and honestly somewhat ridiculous. That doesn't mean the story is bad though, I liked it. But think about it, isn't it very, very, very convenient how Sarah is the only one at home when she witnessed the atrocities on screen? And isn't it really convenient how she drops her phone into a glass of Pepsi that magically appears on the table out of nowhere, as it wasn't mentioned anywhere else in the story, so she can't contact the police directly? And isn't it really, really convenient that the creator of the show actually made an episode just like the one Sarah witnessed when she asked him about it? And who actually added the extra content? Was it Sarah's father? In the end, it was a good story, and I liked the protagonist as a character, even though she was very, very unlucky. And there we fucking go. I think that's enough for now. God damn, I'm so freaking tired from writing the script, editing the video, and recording my voice, and finding info and stuff. But now I've gone through pretty much every creepypasta ever suggested to me, I think. Actually, that's probably not true. Whatever. Do I feel fulfilled? Yeah, I guess. But hey, if there's any creepypasta that you guys want me to cover, lay it on me. And if I missed someone who suggested a story, then I apologize. Once again, thank you guys so much for 15,000 subscribers. That is insane. So, hope you enjoyed this video, and no, something's wrong. So, something feels missing. I can't quite put my finger on it. Was there something I missed? Something I forgot about? Something I decided to put last because so many goddamn people suggested this to me? Something I use as a plot device to keep this joke going? No! Oh Jesus! Oh Jesus! Jeff! What do you want?
I want you to cover me.
Alright, Jeff, I will. Just please let me go. Away. Well, guys, this is it. The big one. The one so many people suggested to me. The one, the only, Jeff the Killer. So here we fucking go. Now, a lot of people got mad at me in my top 13 Creepypastas list when I put Jeff at number 10. People brought up arguments against my arguments, trying to convince me that Jeff is in fact real. Some said he's based on a real killer. A lot of people told me he's insane, a psychopath, which is why he did a bunch of illogical things, and how the bullies could have easily stolen the guns and yada yada yada. And you know what? I can admit that my arguments weren't the best. Like I said before, I was under a lot of time pressure when I made that video, because that video was actually made in just one day. Yeah, one day. Now you might be wondering,
well, if you made that video in one day, then why do your other videos take so long to make, douchebag?
Well, that's because these other videos take research, and I had a day off and no homework or anything that day, so that's why my arguments weren't very well thought out. But now, I'm here today to finally debunk Jeff and prove to you all that Jeff is not real. And I know, there's gonna be people in the comments saying he's still real, how you saw him, how he raped your cat and murdered your mother, and whatever. I don't care. Because you are a fucking liar. Now, the reason why I put Jeff at number 10 was simply because I don't find him that scary. Personally, I find the origin story to be grossly overrated. Now hear me out on this. Overrated doesn't always mean bad. I never said Jeff's story was bad. I simply found it to be full of flaws, poor writing, and baffling decisions that ultimately took me out of the experience. But when suspending my disbelief, it's a pretty alright story. It's just nothing spectacular at all. Now, if you haven't read the story yet, or just want to hear me tell it to you, allow me to summarize. Jeff and his family had recently moved into a new, rich neighborhood, which is of course why all the children there are acting like frickin' gangsters, but whatever. When Jeff and his brother Louie are waiting at the bus stop, they are attacked by 3 bullies who seem to be around 12 years old. 1 year younger than Jeff. Yeah, you guys see? It clearly fucking states in the goddamn story that Jeff is 13, not 17, so shut the fuck up. Anyways, Jeff suddenly, out of nowhere I might add, gets a tingly feeling that he has to hurt someone. And so he receives godlike powers and pwns the bullies by breaking one of their arms and shit. And Jeff and Louie escape the scene. Later that day, the police arrive at Jeff's home, and Louie covers up for Jeff stating that he was the one who beat up the bullies. It was self-defense! Why don't they just say it was self-defense? For fuck's sake, any kid would say that it was self-defense. Any child would be smart enough to tell them that the bullies were the ones who attacked them first. And holy shit, if the bullies say, no, they were the ones who attacked first, get fucking lawyers! Get fucking other witnesses! There has to be other witnesses, because there were people there who saw Jeff and Louie get out of there, which is why the police got there. There must have been freaking eyewitnesses there. Whatever, let's just move on. And so Louie is taken away to juvenile detention, leaving Jeff crushed. A few days later, Jeff is invited to one of the neighbor kids' birthday parties. He's skeptical at first, and I think everyone can identify with this. But ultimately, Jeff decides to show up after his mother forces him to. We all recognize these situations, guys. At first, Jeff is sort of bored, but after a while he starts to warm up and is actually having sort of fun playing with the little kids. But at the party, the bullies, who have magically recovered from a few broken bones and arms in a matter of days, show up and threaten everyone with guns, stating how they're gonna get revenge on Jeff, even though they've only met him once, and they're fully aware of Jeff's overpowerness. So after a bunch of overly violent fighting where a bunch of little 12-year-olds battle with a 13-year-old to death, ooh, it's so scary, Jeff manages to take down 2 of the 3 bullies, but is covered in alcohol. And so the final bully sacrifices himself and lights Jeff on fire. Ooh. When Jeff wakes up in the hospital, his face is white and stuff and yada yada yada. Later that night, he burns out his eyelids to protect his eyes from dust and shit, and would most likely drive him completely blind, and he has cut his mouth to resemble the Joker, which would most likely get infected if not treated properly, but whatever. And Jeff's mother is horrified by what she sees. She goes to get Jeff's father to get the shotgun because she wants to kill her fucking son. Why not just get help? Why? You are awful parents! Jeff hears this and then murder his entire family, including Louie, because this is the original story, not some shitty revision, not some fucking homicidal Louie, because this is the original fucking story. I don't care about any fucking side stories. And he then escapes the scene, never to be seen again. He's still lurking out there somewhere, killing people, and that's the end. Now, anyone with some common sense would see that this story is fake just by the sarcastic way I've told it in so far. But anyways, here we go. Now I realized in my top 13 list, I did say that Jeff's design was sort of original. And I take that back. I mean, Jeff looks just like the Joker. He looks just like L. But anyways, Jeff's skin would not be white. It would look like goddamn Freddy Krueger. And Jeff's 13 in the story. The original story, and don't you fucking tell me he's 17. He's 13. See? 13. A 13-year-old with superhuman abilities to kill anyone. Great. That's scary. The villains, if you want to call them that, they're built up like goddamn comic book villains with cringe-worthy, cheesy, evil lines and everything. And like stated before, no eyelids would seriously damage someone's eyesight and could render someone blind. And cutting up your mouth like that would definitely infect the flesh with bacteria. Jeff must have watched too many Batman movies. Now this brings me to my next point. We know next to nothing about Jeff's life prior to the story. I've done some research on this topic, so here we go. People have said that Jeff's overpowered and stuff because he's a psychopath. Well, listen to this. You're either born a psychopath, or sociopath for that matter, or you become one after traumatic experiences in your life. and Jeff seemed to be a normal kid before shit went down. Now you could say, well, getting burned could make you psycho, but think about it. Jeff gets that tingly feeling out of nowhere when the bullies attack. Out of nowhere. That's why I simply do not buy Jeff's transformation. So there we go. If you didn't know it already, Jeff is fake. Sure, he may be based on a real killer, but that's the keyword here. Based. Based doesn't mean he actually existed. And that's it. That's the majority of creepypastas you guys wanted covered. But in the end, does it really matter whether or not a creepypasta, or anything for that matter, is real or not? Maybe that's the charm of creepypastas. The fear of the unknown. The fear of ambiguity. The fear of the small chance that it may, in fact, be real. And in the end, bringing up arguments for how it may or may not be real is a fun thing to do, sure. But in the end, I personally believe it's all up to you. Yes, you watching this video to decide what you want to believe or not. It's not up to me or someone else, but to you. And that's the charm. Thank you guys for watching, and thank you for subscribing. I cannot thank you guys enough for nearly 15,000 subscribers. It means the world to me. I hope you all will have fantastic days and stay awesome. But I know you will. Take care.
This is possibly the only way. The only way I can tell you, to tell you meant so much to me. This is possibly the only time, the last time I can tell you, to tell you meant so much to me. This is possibly the only way.
Butt munch, banana, potato, popcorn, poop, cookie, arrow in the knee. Funky monkey, my tan, Zoidberg, Richie is cool, untamed jelly boy loves banana soup supreme, YOLO mode boom like boss. I love creepypastas. I pooped my pants while watching this. You don't say. I love boobies. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Potato. Nana. What the fuck am I doing with my life?